everyone, thanks again for tuning into Sin's Workshop. Hope you're all having a great day. Alright, so today we're going to be talking about Ink in the Blood, and this is a novel I had a hard time with it, to be blunt. That's not to say I didn't like it. In the end, I really did like the story, but it took me a while. And I say it took me a while because I did actually read this book twice. I received a digital arc, the first time around. Got about halfway through it. I put it down, I think, to read something else, and just forgot about it. I thought, oh, I'll come back to it. Never got a chance to go back to it. Wasn't really sad about it, but I did receive an arc of the second book, and I'm not about to read a book 2 without reading book 1. So I found the book on Scribd as an audiobook, and I started listening to it. And you know what? I think listening to it was better. Just because the whole reason I struggled with it the first time around is because it's a very serious toned book for a young adult fantasy. Not to say I don't like serious toned books, but I think when I pick up a book that's young adult, I expect there to be a little bit more humor in the story. You know what I mean? I expect there to be some more lightness to it, just because, it is targeted at a younger audience. Addressing serious topics is definitely something you shouldn't shy away from. But I think when your target audience is such a young group of people, they're not used to reading something so somber. And it really is somber. But I think now the second time when I went into it, I kind of knew what I was expecting. But when I was reading it, I felt like, oh, there was such like a weight on my shoulders that really didn't make me eager to finish it, which is probably why I put it down and kind of forgot about it, because I wasn't really. And of course, I started reading it, was it during quarantine? I think during quarantine. So already life is kind of like crazy. The last thing I think any of us want is to read something so somber. So I think I think I started reading it at a bad time. I think it just wasn't what I was expecting the first time around. So the second time around, when I did pick up that audiobook, I think it definitely increased my enjoyment because I actually got to hear the personality in the voice actors. Whereas with the first book, the first time around, when I was reading it, it's just, like I said, it's very serious. Even in the audiobook, it's a very serious, somber tone, but I think that there is some life to it when I was listening to it. Obviously, these are actors, voice actors, they are reading the story, but, I don't think that it was so heavy when I was listening to it. I was able to kind of go back, go do my normal thing, go to work, pop in my earbud, listen to the audiobook as I'm working, when I'm cooking. I think it was better for me to listen to this book. And on that note, let's talk about the actual story. So the reason why it's somber, it does deal with religion. It does deal with, honestly, it reminded me of the Catholic Church back when the Catholic Church was full of, a lot of heavy corruption. Just think of the Borgias, for example. That's kind of the feeling I got when I was reading this story. A lot of corrupt people in power. Sorry, allergies going crazy. A lot of corrupt people in power taking money to do these people's bidding, because what they do is Celia and Anya, they are inklings, and they have the power of the divine to ink themselves with tattoos and then send it off to an individual to mark their skin as sort of guidance. And the perfect example in this novel is they want Celia and Anya, they're like, warn this woman of her vanity. If she leaves her family, she'll be in ruin. And so they kind of send off that message. And then this is when they discover the bureaucracy at play, because she has bruises all over her arms. You know, her husband's abusive. And they do discover he paid, he paid the higher ups to say, hey, my wife is thinking of leaving me, do this. So that's just one example. And it is a really good example in the novel because it does make you think about religion and power. It does make you think of these really important topics. Like, how much power should you give to your church? Are they supposed to control your lives? I am of the opinion, as someone who is Wiccan, raised Catholic, but I chose Wiccan with my mother and family's blessing, so very thankful for you guys. I'm someone who likes to consider myself as spiritual, so I do not think you should just hand over your lives to your religion. I think you should follow the teachings that make you feel good in here, that help you be a better person. I like to think of the church and religion as sort of a guiding tool for individuals to be better people. Do we see that all the time in reality? No, but that's what I think. You don't have to agree with me. That's okay. I don't really turn this into a whole thing on religion. But that is what this novel does address. And I think it is thoughtful and I think it is compelling because of that. But again, very somber. I think the tone of the story is a very somber tone, and I wish it wasn't. I wish there was more lightness to it, especially because Anya and Celia, they run off to join a traveling circus troupe, and you think they're going to be so much fun and antics and color, and there is definitely color. Don't get me wrong, there is definitely color, but their whole act is the angel and the devil in the bell jar, and the angel controlling the devil. So again, there's more religious things at play throughout the entire story. So I do think that makes it compelling, because it is, you can connect it to, I think, a lot of different religions, and I think it makes it relatable to a reader in that way. It just kind of makes you think. It makes you think about what's good for you. And Celia and Anya discover that being Inklings, being part of this servitude, it's not really good for them. They don't like it. They want to get rid of the divine. Understandably so, because the divine does come to Celia, inhabiting another's body, and she doesn't care the harm that she causes by. She's like, oh yeah, this body will probably last for a little bit, and then he'll go crazy. She doesn't care. And at first you kind of think of the divine as Diavala. Her name is Diavala. You think of her as very malicious, but as you get to understand more of her backstory, you understand that there is a reason for her hatred. When she was alive the first time and had control over this mystical ink, she was killed out of fear. People feared her, so they killed her. Now, doesn't that draw some strong religious illusions? Now, when she came back a second time, she wasn't able to come back as herself. She had to come back as the way she is now, inhabiting a different body, but she didn't have the same control over the ink as she did before. So people called her a trickster, and they flogged her to death. All she wanted to do was help people. She just wanted to provide guidance for people, and they killed her twice for it. So what this has done is it has made Diavala angry. She's a very malicious, wrathful entity now. deity, and you understand it. No means do you condone it, but you do understand where her hatred is coming from. And it really does make her, I think, relatable as a character because you feel for her. You really do feel for her. But then you're just like, but you are becoming the monster they all thought you were now. You're proving them right. And her whole goal is to spread Profeta so that she can continue corrupting and controlling everyone. She's like, well, you don't want my guidance? Fine. I'm going to give you my guidance. I'll just control you. So she's a good antagonist. That being said, as far as the story goes, like I said, compelling story, compelling narrative, it's just stretched really, really thin. I feel like this book was so much longer than it needed to be, which is, again, probably why I closed the book, put it aside, and said I'll come back to it, and then never meant to, never got a chance to. But that is something you gotta think about, and it's something I think about with my writing. I wrote this book, and I'm just like, I don't know where I'm going with this anymore. Like I have a beginning, I have a middle, and I know what I want the end to be, but I'm like, I don't know what all this extra stuff is. So I haven't finished it. Needless to say. But I think it's something you have to be conscious about when you are writing, and as this also goes to the editors and the publishers as well. You really do have to think about your audience. Given the tone, I think it makes it feel like the story's just stretched. I feel like there could have been some condensing because there are a lot of scenes that are a little repetitive as the story goes on. And it's like, we get it. Celia hated being an Inkling. We get it. I understand. I get it. That was me when I was listening to this book. I'm like, oh my god, this again? Not to say Celia's a bad character. She's just very kind of whiny sometimes. She really hated her life as an Inkling, and you get it. You really do understand why she does. But you take her battle with Diavala, and you just like stretching it, and it's just like, just keep going, just keep moving. And then her relationship with the plague doctor, and then her relationship with Anya, I was also kind of confused about. I feel like the author tried to include the LGBTQ community, but I feel like it was a little flippant about it, because Celia's just like, I'm a she, her right now, but maybe later I'll be a they. And I'm like, I don't think that's quite how that works. I'm not a non-binary person, so I'm not sure. But I don't think that's how that works. You know, you either are non-binary. It's just like, are your pronouns her, they, or him, they, or, you know. So I felt like the author was trying to include the LGBTQ community, especially non-binary audiences, but I feel like she missed the mark. I feel like they missed the mark. Because to me, it came off as rather flippant, just like it's no big deal. And I feel like choosing your identity is a big deal. So I think she missed the mark on that a little bit. And that happens really early on in the story. Then there's also her relationship with Anya. I was a little confused about. In the beginning, I felt like they were romantic interests, and then they weren't. They were more like sister brother. So I was confused. You know, needless to say, I was a little bit confused about the dynamics with the characters. And that was throughout the story. I was confused about the dynamics. And then the voices. There were times when Celia and Anya kind of blended together. I kind of got lost sometimes near the end. I was like, wait, who's talking right now? I'm like, is it Celia or is it Anya? There needed to be some clearer tagging to give the reader an idea of who is talking, what is going on, especially near the end when the pacing of the story, that last quarter of the story, the pacing just kind of speeds up and goes do 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 do. So then you're just kind of lost again in who's talking, especially when the pacing is moving so fast. I was just like, wait, I know this is this Celia? That was me when I was reading. I'm like, wait, and I would have to rewind and re-listen and be like, what is happening? So I think there just needed to be some more structuring in the story, and I think it did need to be condensed a little bit more. It did feel rather long. Now, once again, it could just feel long because of that tone and the pacing. Um, and the seriousness of the story. But, overall, I do have to give credit to the author for creating a very interesting antagonist and creating a very interesting plot. I was engaged with the plot. I do think the plot line is interesting. Pardon me. And, yeah, overall, I enjoyed it. I didn't love it. I liked it, though. So I'm going to go ahead and give Ink in the Blood 3 stars. Three and a half. Because it does have merit and I am interested to see how book 2 is going to carry the story forward. So when a book has me interested in the sequel, you've done your job in getting my attention, and that deserves some recognition. So 3.5 stars. If you want to go ahead and purchase the book, I will include a link in the description below. If you want to go ahead and check it out from your library, here's your on the fence. Please support your local library and check it out from your local library. I hope you're all having a great rest of your day. And as always, happy reading.